Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is I, your favorite neglectful parasocial relationship, back at it again with another speed paint and an apology video for going to grab the milk and never coming back. I will do it again. No, I won't do it again. Oh wow, it's been well over a year since I made that last speed paint video with my avatar, and I was giving you all updates about the job that I quit and the projects that we had coming up. I completely forgot about that video. This is the second time I am recording this commentary. But on the first recording, I just repeated a whole lot of the same stuff that I made in that previous video, and I feel incredibly stupid. But you know what? It's perfectly fine. That recording went on for like 2 hours, and it went into a whole bunch of shit that I feel like doesn't need to be put out there. I was in a mood, I suppose. I had a fucking friend of mine ditch me. I actually had a couple of friends ditch me for political reasons, really. The 2024 election was certainly a defining moment in this country's political and social climate. After November 8th, when the election was decided and Donald Trump won, I figured, you know what, I'm not a very good liar. It takes a lot of effort for me to lie, and I don't want to just pretend to be somebody else so that I can be perceived as socially acceptable. So I went out and engaged in discourse in a new public square. I shit posted. I just shit posted and made fun of people who were having a meltdown because of Trump. The result of that was that shit post that I posted a couple months ago. It was so funny that I had to make a quick edit and upload it as a video. What was particularly interesting is the divide between the people having a meltdown, these crazies on the left, and the people like me who were supporting Donald Trump. There was a clear divide even in the pony community. Granted, this was on X, so it's naturally going to be controversial. Everyone's going to be at each other's throats. The ponies that were supporting Kamala, they ran back to Reddit. The ponies that were supporting Trump, we went back to /MOP, naturally. But I did lose connections and opportunities because I did that. And I knew that that was going to happen. However, ripping off the Band-Aid, it still kind of hurts, even though it's going to happen, it still kind of hurts. So yeah, I had one person who goes by the name of Begolia, and he is the artist and author that is making the Crusaders comic, which is a series about the Cutie Mark Crusaders all grown up. It's about like 10 years after season 9, and they're facing off against a powered up Cozy Glow, right, called the Scarlet Judge. And it's a really fucking cool comic, man. Begolia is so fucking talented. I'm not even kidding. He started out as a newbie. He had no experience writing a long-form comic or drawing at all, and you could tell in the very first pages it's very, very old-school DeviantArt and Newgrounds type of stuff. A lot of geometric lines, flat colors, and everything. But halfway through the comic, now at this point, he transitioned from color to black and white to save time and effort creating the pages. And at that point, you can really see the quality of his artwork just increase exponentially. Like, to the point where the only real problem that he's having right now, the major problems, are his panel layouts and the pacing of the story, which is something that I'm going to be covering on the video that I'm writing right now for that comic. Yeah, he blocked me. Yeah, he blocked me. He was revoking his permission to make a video on his work. I'm not even kidding. So I'm making a video on his work. I really don't know what it is with these types of people, but he blocked me because of the tweets, right? And my support of Donald Trump. So then he told me that I don't have a right to make a fucking video about his work. Like, who the wow, dude, like, I'm a stoner, don't get me wrong, but that horse that you're on top of is pretty fucking high. I don't know what makes you think you have the right to tell me what I can and cannot make in a video, but yeah, that was wild. And another friend who was actually supposed to collab on that video, I'll keep his name private for my own sake, didn't talk to me for about, a month, when otherwise we were talking every day. And when I asked him, what was up and if he wanted to talk, he said, yeah, maybe tomorrow. And, that night he just blocked me. I asked him why on Twitter, and he didn't respond. He just blocked me on there too. So, I looked on his social media. He's got fucking pronouns in the description, and he's liking, he's retweeting LGBT pony stuff. So I can only assume that it's political in nature. He probably thought that I was too toxic, and, well, whatever. I don't know what it is with these people, but the supposed tolerant left, so much for the tolerant left, like, they'll cut you off, tell you to your face that you're a shitty person, that you are reprehensible, you're not good to be around, this, that, and the other thing. And I assume all of you, are perfectly willing to maintain friendships and keep in contact with family, just even though we disagree with them politically. I don't understand this cognitive dissonance. I don't hate anybody. If you disagree with me politically, that's fine. Probably won't talk about it just for the sake of, keeping the peace, but we got other things in common. Our friendship doesn't have to be, explicitly about politics, or it doesn't have to involve politics at all. But no, I guess that's just too much to fucking ask for these people. Man, I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. It sucks. It hurt. Don't get me wrong. But that's just the way things are nowadays. And, well, it got me thinking about what I consider to be a fundamental rule to life that everybody should practice. And that is simply making a good thing out of a bad situation. You might also know this as, failing forward, but that it doesn't really get the point across to me. So yeah, making a good thing out of a bad situation. So what do I mean by this? Well, continuing on with the political discussion, yeah, it sucks that people have cut me off and potential collaborations are no longer on the table, but the silver lining in that is that I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not, or believe things that I don't believe anymore. It's already out in the open. People already know that I'm a right-leaning individual and that I supported Trump in the election. So, it's done. It's over with. That stuff is out there on the internet forever, and that is always going to be used against me by people who are essentially just letting me know that they're not worth keeping in my life anyway. Ripping off that Band-Aid, yeah, it hurts, but now it's off, and it can heal. But let's get off of the political discussion and talk about a different example, a more artistic example that is applicable to the video. Being unemployed, especially while you're out on your own, is a very stressful thing. And I won't cover this again, because I already covered it in my update video a whole year ago. So being in that situation is like the bird leaving the nest for the first time. You have to think dynamically and take some risks that you otherwise wouldn't consider taking when you're in a comfortable place financially. And so one risk that I took that actually paid off in many, many ways was I offered to create merchandise for a YouTuber known as Rusty. And Rusty is a Soulsborne YouTuber that does ranking videos, mainly on Elden Ring, but he's done Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne and things like that. He's a really fucking cool dude. His videos are hilarious to me, but ranking videos are not everyone's cup of tea, but that's besides the point. I reached out to him in December of 2023, and we didn't strike a deal until January of 2024, around the time when that update, Speed Paint, was posted. While I'm not going to go into discussions about the specifics of the deal and what we wanted to do, because, that's private, that initial dialogue metastasized into a whole lot of different shit that I would have never created if I wasn't in that position in the first place. So, like, for example, in one of his videos, he made a comment about how the Soul Jars of Fortune Spirit Summon looks like a shitty action movie poster. And that inspired me to create an illustration called Sons of Alexander, that as of this recording is just barely being finished up. Things like that. The deal also expanded towards making designs for shirts and stickers and things like that, on top of entire prints, because the themes of these individual designs sort of conglomerated into an overall theme that could be applied in a coherent composition. It's all a very fluid creative process, but I would have never been able to do any of that if I wasn't stuck in a terrible situation where I needed money and I needed it now. And I'm still working for him to this day, a year later. I have a lot of work that I need to do for him, actually, so you're going to be seeing plenty of that on the channel. Here's a second example. This one was not so successful. In May of 2024, I joined the development team of an indie game called Tricky Madness. That game is a spiritual successor to SSX Tricky and SSX 3. SSX 3 is that game for me where I cannot be objective about it. It's so intertwined in nostalgia and my development of style and humor and this and that and the other thing. I was ecstatic to join this team. What I found out soon after, though, is that the team wasn't really a team. It was the head of the project, the one guy that started all of this, and 3 other people. One was a 3D modeler, one was a sound designer, and one was a musician that was making the music for the game. And none of them were working on the game full time. They were working on commission. And so, being that I found a new job at this point, which allowed me to work on and off the clock on my creative stuff, he and I were the only ones that were working on the game full time. So what was my part in it? Well, I was the only creative lead in the team. Everyone else was technical, aside from the musician who was, just making the music. So I was initially brought on to make 8 characters and 16 boards, but we needed 4 characters in order for the game to launch in early access in August or September, right? So the goal here was 4 characters and 8 boards, and I subdivided these into 4 universal boards that anybody can use, and 4 character-specific boards that has lore significance and a story behind it, which informs the player about who the character actually is. Because of the mismanagement that was going on, I took on more and more responsibilities, voluntarily. I decided to help out with the dialogue, the UI design. I helped out with level design. I recruited voice talent. So eventually it got to the point where I was getting more and more influence over the game, and he and I were talking about just making me the art director. That didn't last very long at all, because it was readily apparent when he hired a different artist that his vision of the game and my vision of the game were not compatible. I'm trying to keep things relatively vague because I don't want to give out personal information or anything that can come, back to me. He wanted to keep the game, family friendly, and didn't want anything sexual associated with the game. However, this is despite the fact that the second artist he hired was explicitly a hentai artist that did pinup illustrations of popular characters, right? Like Android 18, Bulma, a lot of Dragon Ball stuff, really. His vision of the game was explicitly family friendly and did not want any association with, sexual stuff at all, which led to a disagreement between he and I about allowing a pinup girl owned by another popular hentai artist to be made a character in the game. This artist had 400,000 plus followers, and he was offering this character to us on a silver platter. And I thought it was just a no-brainer. 400,000 potential sales right there on a silver platter, and he just denied it outright. This is despite the fact that the artist which introduced us to that creator himself was a hentai artist. So I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And his reasoning was that it doesn't matter if the artist is known for porn, it just matters if the characters in the game are associated with pornographic material or anything NSFW, because kids might be exposed to that. So I, as an independent artist, and they could theoretically make porn of the characters which were in the game, and that would be perfectly fine according to him. But if there's already pre-established sexual content about the characters in the game, even if their presence in the game is not inherently sexual, that wasn't okay for some reason. You have to keep the game family friendly, but we can absolutely get porn artists to make the character decide. Like, it was so fucking weird, right? And his reasoning for that was he didn't want kids to be exposed to porn. The very same kids who are jerking off in the middle school bathroom after they play fucking Doom on their Nintendo Switch. I just didn't understand it. This was a game with a very niche audience. Most of the people who are going to be buying the game are going to be adults. SSX3 in particular had bikinis, references to drugs. It had all sorts of weird and crazy shit that made it alternative. SSX3 released in 2003, so it was when that whole alternative culture, new metal, emo, and punk, all of that was in full swing. And he thought that we could still do all of that stuff while keeping it E-rated. And I tried to tell him that's not going to work, because the ESRB that rated SSX3 in 2003 is not the same ESRB that's going to be rating this game. Like, there's different standards now. Things are a hell of a lot more strict than they used to be. If we want to do what we want to do here, it has to be at least a teen rating, at the very least. And he just didn't comprehend that. Anyway, the basic gist of it is that the team was already disorganized and didn't have any communication as it was. I was so infatuated with the idea that I was a part of a spiritual successor to one of the most important games in my life that I got egotistical about my vision of the game and the way things that should be done. I have very strong opinions about, rendering, how characters should look, what good level design is, this, that, and the other thing, which is the result of many, many years of studying, debating, video essays, first-hand experience, things like that. And as a result, I became bullheaded. This led to a falling out between me and him. I was not willing to compromise on my character designs, my vision of the game, or what the UI needed to look like, all of these other things, because I was 100% confident on what we needed to do in order to make a viable product, especially considering this game had no marketing whatsoever. I even offered to help him make the YouTube channel and do content for the game, but despite all of the responsibilities that I had taken up voluntarily, and despite the title art director being thrown my way, he kicked me off the project because of these creative differences. And he did so because written in the original contract was 8 characters and 16 board designs by June 6th. He wanted those done in 1 month, and I completely spaced it because I was too busy, doing everything else. Writing the lore, making the character designs, figuring out what the UI is looking like, building a unique system of, snowboards to make our game, stand out and things like that. But when these creative differences came to a head, when his workload just got bigger and bigger and bigger because he was mismanaging the fuck out of the project, he kicked me off because I simply wouldn't compromise on my vision of his game. And so it wasn't until a couple of months later, it took that long for me to calm down from the whole situation, where I was able to self-reflect and realize that I was nowhere near a saint in that situation. I was egotistical, I was bullheaded, I allowed my passion for the idea of the game to cloud my judgment and come across as uncompromising and, well, quite frankly, confrontational. That's ultimately on me. I just got in my own way, and that made me, realize just how strong-willed I am when it comes to creative efforts, and that I really can allow that side of myself to, cloud my judgment and really get in my own way. Cloud my judgment. And so what's the point? Why am I telling you all of this? Well, unfortunate as the situation was, I don't regret doing it because I did learn a lot about myself. That was the first time that I have ever actually worked explicitly with a team of people in order to create something, and I failed miserably. I allowed my passion for the idea of the game to cloud my judgment, and as a result I became bullheaded, I became egotistical, and I was not willing to compromise based on the needs that we were facing at the time. Now granted, there were a lot of other problems that were going on with the development of the game at that time, but I certainly did not help the situation at all. And I didn't realize that until a couple of months after the dust had settled, and I allowed myself to self-reflect. So the silver lining here is that I now have a better understanding of who and what I am as a professional, as a creative, and as a team player, and how my otherwise positive traits like conviction, confidence, and metastasize into toxic traits that really put me at odds with the rest of the team and just sort of stalled development. Whew, wow, that is a devastating to recognize about yourself, because nobody likes that guy. Nobody wants to work with that guy, and I certainly don't like that guy either. But now I know. Now I understand that there is a line that needs to be drawn, and I think that I'm all the better for it. So, talk about failing forward, I suppose. But after that whole kerfuffle, I needed to pull my head out of my ass and get finished with prior obligations that I had made before I even joined the team. One of those obligations is the illustration that you're seeing right now. And so what exactly are you seeing? What the fuck is this fucking cuboid marshmallow with a funny face? The thing that you're looking at right now is called a loaf. And a loaf is a subgenre of pony plushies that are often passed around in what I like to call the plushy black market. The plushmancers, so to speak. Loaves were made popular on the board by a good friend of mine called Loafanon. His little mascot and his favorite loaf is the Trixie loaf, which you're going to be seeing here in the next couple of weeks, I believe. But he collects small loaves, right? The smaller ones have these little beads for eyes and a less detailed face, But I personally collect the big loaves, the jumbo loaves, the girth. God damn. Yeah, I collect the bigger loaves. And the bigger loaves are what you're seeing being illustrated, where the eyes are actual patches, right? And I have 3 loaves. I have a Trixie, a Derpy, and a Minky, or Obsidian, as she would probably be known right now. Obsidian is a fan character that was created for the sequel to Cupcakes that was written by a fan of Cupcakes. But I digress. So I did a commission for Loafanon that was the Trixie loaf, based on the episode where Trixie fired herself out of a fucking cannon and into a lion's mouth, which was a whole allegory for suicide. It was a pretty dark episode, but I liked it. That illustration only took me about 6 hours, and I realized, oh my god, it's reasonably fun to draw. It's a simple subject, just a cube with some fur, add a little bit of hair, and add a simple face, and it's done. It's nice, it's simple, it's visually appealing to some people. I posted some loaves on Reddit, and the first comment was, "What the fuck is that Furby from hell looking ass thing?" So it's not everybody's cup of tea, I suppose. But you get the point. It's a cute, simple little design that I can leverage. So I took a couple of commissions from some friends of mine to get a few extra bucks. One of them being this one. This commission was on the back burner for a while until I figured out what exactly I wanted to do with it. And what I eventually came up with was Rarity sitting on top of a pile of jewels, which made sense to me at the time because I associate Rarity the most with the Diamond Dogs episode and with the jewels she uses to make the dresses and all that type of stuff. It was an immediate visual association that I just went with. That was a terrible idea. That was a fucking awful idea. Simply because rendering all of those jewels turned out to be absolute hell. So I went about it as color coding all of the jewels into green, red, purple, blue, and white, and putting them all on their own separate layers. Well, all of these separate layers, they need to be cleaned up because jewels are very refined and geometric and have, perfect lines to them. And I needed to do that with all of the different layers. Once that was done, I then needed to fill in all of the negative space in the pile of jewels with other jewels, and then I needed to render all of the different jewels with their own little textures and their sharp highlights and the light refracting through the jewels and onto separate jewels, which changes the color of that one, and it was just hell. I realized I cannot do this. The visual motif of the jewels wasn't working. It didn't look good, right? And in order to make it look good, it would take dozens of hours. It wasn't viable. I couldn't do it. So I had to think of something, and this was around Christmas time. So I got the idea of having Rarity sit on top of Christmas presents. And I thought that this was a brilliant idea because it's so in character and it's rather timely. Rarity is the element of generosity. So, and in replacing the jewels with presents, it makes the whole composition so much easier because the presents were just cubes and cylinders. It's a hell of a lot easier to render because presents can be rendered out with the same textures as crystals. It also allowed me to keep the perspective I already put Rarity in, so I don't have to, redraw her in order to accommodate some other platform. But the cherry on top is that this is so much more in character. The jewels came across as, greedy and braggadocious, like, oh, look how rich I am. So the presents are just so much more fitting, so much more visually appealing. So I ran this idea by the commissioner. She was a huge fan of it. Really, having the loaf sit on top of a platform was my idea in the first place. She just wanted a Rarity loaf. But she approved of the idea, and I got to work. In order to do this, I obviously immediately established that there needs to be a present for each of the other main six. And anything on top of that was just intuition. The composition that I settled on was based on loose, educated estimations of what she would potentially get these characters. Being that Rarity's mane and tail are purple, I decided she would be sitting on top of a long, slender book-like present that was a nice, fine platform that was purple for Twilight. And so that way we have a good visual cohesion between the mane and the tail and the present that Rarity is sitting on top of. Twilight's present, therefore, was being supported by Dash's present and by Applejack's present. I am guilty of the same thing a lot of other people are in associating Applejack with like large things, so I'd imagine whatever she got Applejack would be pretty sizable. And I made Dash's present larger because the sky blue and the rainbow tape it really balanced out the warmer colors that were to the right of the illustration. And so Fluttershy's was right behind the heart present, and I thought that was a pretty good, considering Applejack's and Apple Bloom's were already pretty prominent on the right side of the illustration, so we didn't need much more yellow. So I just put her behind the heart present. But it wasn't quite big enough to get all the way up to the top, and I didn't want to extend the present all the way up that far, so, I fixed that by putting a little present for Trixie. Then there comes the issue of Pinkie. What in the fuck could Rarity possibly get Pinkie? I don't know why I made Pinkie's present cylindrical in shape, but I figured that was appropriate to Pinkie Pie's character, and it also breaks up the shape language in the composition, so it's easier to look at. And so I figured, there's something missing here. This is Pinkie Pie's present. There's got to be something there. And I got the brilliant idea to put an explosive caution sign on the fucking present. So now people have to wonder what the fuck is inside of that present. And I don't know. Use your imagination. And I was really happy with the composition up until this point. But I still felt kind of burned that I wasted so much time on the jewels. I think I spent like 10 hours on them just to disregard them. And I disregarded that visual design for a good reason. But I felt like I still wanted to incorporate them in some way. And I was kind of thinking about how. And I realized, the original idea was to put Spike behind the pile of jewels with hearts on them because, Spike's a dragon and he eats crystals, right? So his waifu sitting on top of a bunch of crystals is kind of like looking at your crush sitting on a pile of food, which is, wow, actually a pretty sexual image as far as Spike is concerned. No, if this is a Christmas illustration, then Rarity would probably give him a gift basket of jewels. And I thought, that's a brilliant idea. That's a good way to break up the shape language on the right side, thus balance out pinkies present on a visual level, while also utilizing previous cut work in a way that contributes to this better idea. And besides, I get the opportunity now to try and texture clear plastic wrap for a gift basket. I never done that up until this point, and I don't think I'm going to do it again because it kind of fucking sucks. And clear plastic texturing is just a bitch. It was just as miserable as I thought it was going to be. But you know what? I made it look good. I relied more on the retexturing and reshaping of the jewels in the gift basket in order to sell the effect a little bit more. And I made the bowl look a little bit more plastic than I originally wanted it to look, but it sells the idea. And yeah, by this point, I just wanted to get this commission out the door. And so, in order to round everything out, we have Trixie and we have Spike. It's very likely that Rarity would also get a present for the Crusaders as well. Scootaloo, Sweetie Belle, and Apple Bloom. So I put Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle behind Rainbow Dash, and Apple Bloom right by her sister, Applejack. And that balanced everything out, having smaller presents at the end, so we have a nice sort of triangular composition that rounded everything out. And I don't know why I felt the need to put like a hug underneath the presents. I think I recall the illustration looking like it's floating in midair, and so providing the extra context of these presents are on top of like a rug, like she's surprising the main six and all of her friends with all of these presents in the morning. I think that just was a nice little bow on top, pun intended. And originally, I was going to spike everything up. Like, you could see the fabric sticking up one of those thicker fur rugs. But it just didn't work with the design. And I was just like, oh my god, fuck it. Oh my god, fuck it. I couldn't be bothered. Who cares? Honestly, who's going to fucking care? This is as good of a time as any to end this off. You can see the final product scrolling across your screen as we speak. It is one of my favorite pieces to look at. I'm sure somebody is going to be able to find some mistake that I made somewhere, and that's going to drive me crazy. But for now, my brain is flooded with the dopamines and the feel-good chemicals looking at it, and the client was more than happy with it. So, yes! Take care of yourselves, and until next time, have yourselves a damn good one.